Welcome to Storytime Podcast. I am here today with Chameleon and Chief and Kiwi, and my name is Rosemary, your host. And we are doing a story time tonight. And Chief, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to meet you guys. What story
It's
do
a
you have?
pleasure being here as always. It's your
Thank
boy
you.
Chief in the building.
Thank you for letting me be here. Thank you.
Thank you for being
Yeah,
here.
we thank you for paying your $2, Grandma, or more like $6 or how many, whatever the crazy conversion rate is nowadays.
You've got to do the conversion rate plus any over fees from whomever.
Hmm.
All right, what is the story you have for us tonight?
I don't know, whatever story that you pick. You don't tell me these things, you know.
I'll tell you. We picked the Woodsman story, the Woodsman series.
The Woodsman.
Yes.
The Woodsman has many names. Most fundamentally, the Sasquatch or Bigfoot.
Oh, this will be fun.
Yeah. I was watching something on television and then I was like, well, I could go look into that. You could just see how my mind works sometimes.
Yes, we
This
do.
is what?
I said, yes, we do.
Yeah, that's like the one that we're gonna do next. Was I was going through to relationship problems, and most of the time when I get like really sad or whatever, I become my most creative. So take that as you will. I'm able to crank out like 3 or 4 stories when I'm not feeling all that happy,
I can understand
which is
that.
weird.
I
Which
can
is weird, but yeah.
totally understand that with the art aspect. I do. Yeah, I really do.
This is the Woodsman Series, starting the hunt. Our story is one of many that float on the winds of time. It tells of a mysterious mythical being or beings that are believed to have existed alongside man and many of his ancestors. But the story that this tale tells of is when a legendary warrior, who history and his people will always remember for both the things he accomplished in his lifetime, but most importantly for how he lived his life in general. Our story starts simply as many do. We find the legendary warrior and many of the other people of the village gathered at the village center. The chief of the village is addressing the people, giving them all news of from the medicine man, along with many other things. The chief then informs the people that many hunting parties have gone out during the passing of each moon and have found little to no game to bring back to the village, and that the supply they had managed to have as surplus was quickly running out. And so he must ask the men of the village if they would volunteer to go on if they would volunteer to go on an extended hunting trip that would take them to the base of the mountain that lay a day's journey from the village. It is a place that few men of the village went to, not out of fear, but it is said to be the home of many giant bears, along with a woodsman or keeper of the woods that is said to be very protective of that area of the forest. And it is said that 5 men volunteer to go on this hunt. One of them being the legendary warrior who is a well-known hunter. It is said that his bow has the power of 3 bows and that his arrows never miss their target. The same 3 are said to have been in his quiver from the time he was a small boy up until now. After all the volunteers have gathered together alongside the chief, and all have agreed to give what supplies they can to help them complete their hunt, which is to start the next morning, the people all return to their lodges. It is then that the legendary warrior readies everything he will need for the hunt, deciding against taking the 3 magic arrows that he usually carries when out on a hunt. He instead packs 2 quivers full of arrows that are slightly longer and thicker than normal arrows in order to handle the draw strength of his bow that was given to him after he accomplished one of the many thought impossible tasks throughout his life. After everything is ready and packed for that next morning, he and his wife eat the night's meal and then go to sleep just after the sun leaves the sky, so the warrior will be well rested for the next day's journey. To be continued.
I'm
Keep
waiting.
going.
Yes, I'm waiting
Keep
for it.
going, or
Yes.
okay. This is attacked. It is still dark when the men gathered at the village center. Each had taken the time to hug and kiss their families. Their horses were tied together as they were all gathered in a circle to send a prayer to Creator, asking that their hunt be successful and that all the men return to their families. With one last check of their persons and their ponies to make sure that they had everything they would need for their journey, the men begin their journey to the base of the mountain where they hoped the game would be plentiful. It takes them the best part of the day to get to where they feel the best place to camp. Having stopped only for a few drinks of water from their water skins, and to make sure to check the travois they had with them, did not encounter any difficulties or damage. Once the horses were unpacked and everybody has had a slab of dried meat, the men set about gathering firewood and refilling everyone's water skins. But it is while in the forest gathering wood for that night's fire that two men come rushing from the trees into the clearing where their camp is, as fast as their legs can carry them, all thoughts of gathering wood forgotten. It takes some time for the men to calm down long enough to tell the other three what had happened to make them act in such a manner. It is then that they tell the others that they were in a thicket of trees, maybe 100 yards from camp, with both of them standing side by side, that they were both nearly hit with large rocks thrown through the trees with such force that it took the bark off one of the trees that was hit and left quite a large dent in another from a second rock that was thrown. It is then that another of the men's voices his opinion that they must pack up camp and return to the village before they anger the woodsman, and he comes for them for trespassing in his forest. The two elder hunters in the party, being the legendary warrior and his friend, who had grown with him from childhood, say that they cannot simply leave because they must return to the village with the meat their people need with the utmost desperation, and that the men need not be scared of the stories of the woodsman, and that most of those stories were told to scare small children from exploring the woods alone. Despite saying these words to the younger men, the warrior cannot help but feel that they are being watched from a distance. But he does his best to shake the feeling and go about things as he normally would. But it only makes him more nervous to know that his instincts are never wrong. To be continued.
Now we're getting into the whole cryptid thing. I love it.
Keep going.
Yes.
This is being hunted. It was a very uneventful evening after the incident the men had had gathering wood for the camp just before nightfall. After a quick meal of dried meat with some berries and water the party had brought with them, the men decided to get an early rest, having traveled most of the day, and no doubt having an even more draining day the next days ahead. Each man lay on his sleeping roll, which consisted of either woven reeds or a length of animal hide to insulate him from the ground. Sleep didn't come easy for any of the party, for even though it wasn't said among them, there was an overwhelming feeling of dread about what was to come in the coming days. As usual, the legendary warrior was first to rise, but all the men were awake and ready well before sunlight that day. The discussion about who in the party would go where and what game this members these members of the party would try to get, which the younger of the men saying they wanted to be the ones to go after Wapiti, the elk, which caused a disagreement among the men because even though there would be three of the younger men going, it did not guarantee success. But in the end, it was agreed upon most because to argue would have been a waste of time. And so, after all was settled and the place the party would meet was understood, the men separated. With the two older hunters headed down to a small pond to wait for any game that would come there for a morning drink, and the three younger men headed into the forest with its many valuable animals and and once they made a hunting blind of sorts as to disguise their appearance among the brush and grass that surrounded the pond on all but one side, which a well-worn path showed was where the animals used to reach the water. After sitting a while, the warrior's companion nods his head towards the edge of the clearing that led to the pond, and it is then that four deer, two of which are does with a fawn and a buck, make their way to the water's edge. After watching the deer approach and making sure not to make any unnecessary movements or noise, the men ready their bows, taking care to make sure they do not take the mother of the fawn, but knowing the fawn will always stick close to its mother. So if they do not take that doe, they will not have to worry. Each man waits for the deer to give a clean shot, and in perfect sync, let arrows fly from their bows, only seconds apart, downing the single doe and the buck, with the other pair running off in the surrounding bush. After the men have dressed the deer and made a small travois from long sticks and braided reeds, they set off for the meeting point. As they walk, they talk about what the younger men experienced that past day, each giving his opinion, but also not saying what was on both of their minds. That being them knowing they weren't alone in these woods, and the sooner they returned to the village, the better for all of them. It was quite a walk to the meeting place, which is made in silence, other than to ask if each other's tired, and switching the travois from one another. Little is said. They make it to the clearing where the party agreed to meet, but see that no one is there. So they begin to butcher the meat of the deer while they wait. When one of the younger men comes running from a thicket of trees covered in blood, both men hastily put the deer away and grab their bows. The the blood covered man is upon them in seconds, it seems, screaming about how the others are dead, having been attacked by the woodsman and how he ripped them to pieces. It takes both men to hold him in place as he fights to get away. All he says over and over is how he's coming to get the rest of them. The man struggles with all his might to get away. After a long, exhausting struggle, the man finally collapses from exhaustion, and the warrior and his friend discuss what they must do next, with their options being to go look for the other members of their party, or to do or do they take what meat they have and the man who witnessed what happened to the others and return to the village. After a long discussion, the men decide to return to camp and pack what they need to make the trip back to the village. They can only hope by the time they get to camp, the terrified man will have his wits about him. It is a it is quite a trip back to camp with progress being slow because they have only one travois and it wasn't meant to handle the mountain of weight that is now loaded with it. That is now loaded with. It takes most of the morning to get back to camp, and it is then that they find everything they had left there destroyed. The two men exchange a glance and a nod. Maybe the stories weren't just stories to scare the children after all. To be continued.
Hmm.
Keep going.
I mean, I'm still looking into like, okay, so what did they like offend the woodsman? It seems right,
Uh,
and the protection, obviously.
yeah.
So I do see that aspect in there. I Unless anybody else has something to say.
But how did they offend the woodsman? Because when they did shoot the animals, they made sure that they the doe and the fawn safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just the common practice. You always leave the young one and the mother alive. So yeah, curious as to find out what
Yeah,
caused the upset.
very true.
But remember, it said that few men ventured to that part of the woods, the part of the forest. So could there be a reason why not very many people went up there? And maybe nobody wanted to really talk about why they didn't go there. And it was just understood that you're not supposed to go there.
It could be like sacred ground, and killing anything on that ground, even if it was in respect, just isn't. It's not something that is looked upon.
Uh,
Yeah, I was thinking those lines as well after the statement that you made. Yeah, that it was sacred ground and yeah, that they used the sacredness of it.
so do you want to hear the end?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Well, there's actually two parts.
Okay.
Two. This is the end of the story, but we have a like an epilogue.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
This is Return to the Village. After gathering what they could use from the camp, the men came to the realization that they had no food, besides the deer that they had got on that morning's hunt. They had 3 water skins for water. The men had left the horses in the small clearing not far from camp so they could graze and get water from the river near there. So they made the decision to go get the horses and bring them back to camp. The younger of the men still lay in what appeared to be a full sleep on the small travois they had used to get him and the deer to camp. It was a hard decision whether or not to wake him so he could go with them, but they decided against it for the sole reason of not wanting to have to fight with him like earlier. So the 2 men left him sleeping on the travois while they made the short trip to get the horses. It is while they gathered the horses that they heard loud screams and yells coming from the direction of camp that made them jump on the 2 horses they had managed to catch. They rode the horses at their fastest gallop back to camp, only to find the man they had left there, on the ground beside the fire pit, a large pool of blood surrounding his body, the deer gone, and the small travois in pieces around the camp. It is while inspecting the man's body that they hear a thunderous roar come from up on the mountain, a roar so loud that the thing that had made it had to be 3 to 4 times the size of a man. Then, as the men are standing, their eyes locked on the direction of the roar, a large rock, bigger than any rock a normal man could throw, could what? Larger than any rock a normal man could even pick up, let alone throw any distance, comes flying from the tree thicket where the 2 men had the first experience with being watched and pelted with rocks. With this, the 2 men pull their bows from their shoulders, pointing at the thicket with an arrow on the string. All is silent until the legendary warrior yells, "Show yourself, coward!" To which another roar echoes through the trees as a beast or being around 7 to 7.5 feet tall steps from the trees into the clearing where the camp is, covered in a thick hair all over his body except his hands, feet, and face. The being stands before the men. The warrior lowers his bow. "Why have you hurt our friends?" he asks the being. "They did not respect my forest and so had to be punished," the being says to the men. "What did they do?" the other man asks. They shot many animals with no intention of taking their meat, the being says to them. I understand your anger, but to kill was also a waste of life because these men had families, the legendary warrior says. Your kind must learn that with waste of things Mother Earth provides for you, there will be consequences. Especially in my woods, the being says before turning without another word and disappearing into the thicket of trees again. And so ends the story of the legendary warriors encounter of a being. So ends the story of a legendary warrior's encounter of a being only said to exist in legend. Okay, this is, I guess you would say it's like an epilogue.
Mhm.
Okay, this is After the Return. This story is direct from the source. It describes how a legendary warrior told of his experience evolving a legendary being or beings thought to only exist in legend, and story passed down throughout the history of this warrior's life. It is said that the warrior only told the story of his experience 2 times in his whole life after it happened. But what isn't known to maybe is that without the telling of the experience, nobody saw the painting the warrior had the warrior made on a tanned deer hide he kept hidden among his belongings, which along with the knowledge of the 2 times he ever told of this event in his life only adds more evidence that he really saw what he saw that day. But that was part of the story he never told, and neither did his friend who experienced that day with him. This drawing wasn't known until after the warrior made his journey to the spirit world, and his son was gathering what he needed to make the journey to the ancestors. The story since been lo- has long is long since been lost to history. The most non-disputable evidence that the beings that guard the many forests that cover Mother Earth aren't just things of legend or story, and that these things are indeed flesh and blood, just as we are. The end.
I like that it's interesting to tie in again with the Bigfoot stories, right? So even the rock throwing and such, um, and seeing that again, the woods protector, the woodsman protector. But a lot of I think because it's more of a series nowadays. If you've seen them, a lot of people, I think, in the last few years, have been making more of those Bigfoot hunting series. So it kind of corroborates with some of the stories that you see in there, what they record,
Mm.
and like the tree knocking and the rock throwing, and just certain encounters with said Bigfoots, with Bigfoot and in general. And then also, I've known of a series where again, where a guy who is in the Blue Ridge Mountains does that. He actually sees Bigfoot, but the way that they control the environment, like as interdimensional, is more of this. They're able to hide more, like camouflage.
Yeah.
So I like how
But
that's.
did you notice in the end, near the end of the story, where the roar came from up the mountain, and then the Bigfoot stepped out of the thicket of trees in front of them? Did you catch that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the interdimensional movement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But what I sort of can't work out was that the men that took the deer, that killed the deer, they were actually taking it to use the meat, not to abuse it.
Remember,
So
the 3 younger guys went up the mountain to try
yeah,
and get any help. Maybe the whole woodsman is out there protecting the forest
yeah. So we
thing
don't
and
know
just
quite
went
what
off
they did.
willy, yeah,
Yeah,
just went off willy nilly and started just shooting whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Not showing the respect that was needed.
Uh,
Um, Even so, like their people were starting to run out of food. Um, the young ones just went off, and we don't know whether they didn't give back a sacrifice to the woodsman, before they took their meat, an offering back to him.
Mm-hmm.
So that may have been offensive to him as well, and may have made him think, well, they really don't know what they're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few little scenarios you could run from that story as to why the younger ones, got killed and why he didn't. The two other ones didn't. Yeah, but I still can't quite figure out because the two older ones took the meat for, to take back to the village.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bigfoot, he destroyed all that meat when he killed the third person.
No, he took the meat. The deer was gone.
Yeah. Well, he took the meat and not destroyed it. Yeah. But the older hunters probably would have shown the respect. So maybe it was just that was grounds that weren't allowed to be hunted out in the first place.
Because you see that the only people that got attacked were the people that went off in the forest up the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And where did all the roars and all that come from was up the mountain. So obviously,
mountain, yeah. Yeah. It's
I just think it's a good story.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like protectors of the sacred space, again, the wood space. And then, like we were saying, like I know that, and I found a video series with a guy. I won't mention it because again, if there's whatever's going on, but on YouTube where he lives in the Blue Ridge, and the way that his video series actually started off with him just homesteading, and he's with somebody who's native, but from, I believe she's from Polynesia, so she's not even from this area, and when they came across the Bigfoot in the area, the way that they treat the land though, and the animals on the land, and even the way there's times when he's in the woods and he's talking, and he tells people to, like, you can watch the camera behind me, he'll do a talk and it's just him talking, but he leaves offerings. So it's more about not taking, he doesn't take anything from there, but he leaves offerings. So it's more about, again, this is a sacred space, but now how many of us and as humans are encroaching on these sacred spaces that are no longer, like, they're not wild anymore. It's like habitats, kind of like encroaching on the habitats of the animals, and that encroachment is not keeping the land sacred with Mother Earth, like I was saying. The protection, that the actual blessings of Mother Earth, things that are coming off of it, and instead we're just taking it and twisting the land, putting concrete down, building a house there, knocking stuff down. No wonders you have more Bigfoot encounters, or people that talk about Bigfoot encounters, and some of them have been quite terrifying. People breaking windows and such, so trashing places. It's just disrespectful.
Question. Bigfoot and Sasquatch, are they one and the same? Just different names from different areas? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I just reconfirming that I was thinking along the right track. Yeah, I can see them getting pretty upset about what is happening to the environment.
I'll have to go take a picture.
Humans,
picture down there. Yeah.
Humans just take for granted that whatever land they see belongs to them. Whether it's, and unfortunately most of it has been through the colonization of different countries. But I think these days, even a lot of the younger people from the different native areas just follow the colonization thoughts that, that land, we can do anything we want with it, regardless of that it's sacred land. Because all those teachings these days most of those teachings these days have gone by the board. They just aren't brought up with the young people anymore.
Uh-huh.
So even way back when your story would have been set on, that same trait is there, that the young men think they have the right to do anything. But again, is that the warrior mentality, or is that most young males' mentality?
Well,
I mean, before we came on, you asked the question, Chief, about about why are women so complicated. Well, in this story, we can actually put that back as to why young men are so out there and think that everything can be trampled on, regardless of heritage.
That is a valid, that's actually been a common theme both today and the last couple of days about, again, we were talking about destroying, but masculine, in general, masculine and feminine energies, and it's come up quite often, even the object of the yin yang. Whereas women, the divine feminine in general, are here in a way, they are the unseen, the yin part, right? The dark part of the yin yang, the moisture, the blackness, the cosmos, the womb. They are the ones that are the bridgeway, which is that little dot, right? Into the 3D realm. Masculines are more on the logical side, the physical side, the geometry side, the building side, they're hands on. So what happens is the divine feminine are the ones, and I've talked about this, that bring you can go back to biblical forbidden fruit, right? They're bringing the knowledge in from the astral. And what they do is they hand this knowledge and work in unison, in completeness, like in compatibility with the masculine, so that the masculine builds in the world. So of course men have this natural innate inside of them to want to be hands-on, to want to bend things to their will. Again, it's because they're, if they're guided the wrong way in a way. So I'm wondering, even if again these young men didn't have a good motherly figure, the wisdom, the women of the tribe to actually teach these masculines how to again just be compassionate. Again, that's the motherling side, right? The motherling's the compassion of a mother, the unconditional love of a mother. Those all play in. So this gives that air of respect, that isn't, we don't see nowadays. You know what I mean? And how many think about it in today's society. How many mothers are out there, because the way society is lately, and the way that inflation, we see the money, how many of mothers don't actually mother their children anymore because they have to go get a job too. They're going working all day.
Yeah, because they've got to help support the income to support the family.
Right. And so that compassion and unconditional love for just nature in itself isn't always taught. It's not taught unless you have somebody in that capacity. And so I'm wondering if these younger men just didn't have the mother figure in their village, right? They didn't have maybe they didn't listen to the village elders, that the women, the wisdom that the women had, the clan leaders, right? Maybe they didn't listen. And so instead of heeding that warning, Mother Nature, why was it Mother Nature? They disrespected Mother Nature too, as within, so without, right? They didn't respect their mothers, their clan mothers, and listen to the elders. And so they also disrespected the land outside of them too.
Yeah, and how much of that is to do with the way that the matriarchal society got overrun by the patriarchal society? Mm-hmm. Because I don't know within the Native American culture whether it's matriarchal or patriarchal. But I think that, yes, today and possibly back then, that the women weren't shown all the respect that they should be. And I also think that maybe, apart from our really good warriors in this story, how many of the males actually said to the young men, well, look, when you go hunting, you must show respect, you must do this, you must do that? Because I think these days, as you said, people are just got to go out and got to work, so they're not getting either the male or female teachings in their life
Mm-mm.
because they are out having to earn those dollars to actually put food on the plate of the children. And they don't have time when they come home from work. They just want to go to sleep, to get up again, to go back to work again. Because they know that if they don't, their family's going to go hungry. So, both sides, for this generation's coming up, both sides of that male-female teachings aren't there. So, it's a sad state of affairs when you think about it.
Yeah.
I would think about it as sort of how you said it, Grandma, like how some people know the old ways, but they don't really practice it the way that they're supposed to. And so you have these older guys that are like, that actually went and did the right thing, like they probably prayed over the animal and gave thanks and all that. And then you probably had those younger guys that are like, well, we could just, we don't really have to do that because that's more the old way of doing things. And, they
Yeah,
were told that sort of thing, but they never, or probably never really took it as serious as what, because that, like, even like now, like I hear like my uncles and all that, they're talking about how the kids don't even know how to go out and hunt now, like because some of the tribal members have married non-natives, so they're not allowed to take their kids hunting with them because they put in the proclamation that unless you're over 18, I think, that you can't take your kid or your unless you're actually married to the lady, and none of her family can go camping with you. So how are your kids if your kids are mixed bloods or whatever? How are they going to learn all the traditional ways that your family has taught you if they can't even go hunt or ride around with you in the mountains while you go hunt?
Right.
yeah. Well, that comes back to the elders themselves. I mean, they need to realize that unless they actually allow um, the people that are of mixed descent, regardless of the proportion of that mixed descent, that they're going to lose their whole culture if they don't allow um, the people of mixed bloods to actually go out and learn these traditions and know how to follow the correct way of doing things. So the elders that have got control over to say who can go and who shouldn't go, I actually think they need a really good rack up, because they are destroying their own culture by not allowing that.
Mhm. And that's why the culture is being lost. That's why the language is being lost. As sad as it is, the language is being lost. Like now, like there are some. I only know of a few people, even my age, and I'm not even that old. Like only know a few of the
Don't
people
either.
my age that know even some of the language. Not like it's just crazy. Like thinking about how grandma and my uncles and my mom and them grew up speaking it, and then you go look at these kids nowadays and they don't understand even one word. They can't even introduce themselves in Ute.
Yeah, that is.
They can't even count or say the colors or anything. Like
Yeah,
it's just crazy.
that's yeah, that's one thing that I do have to give my country credit for, is that they are resurrecting Maori. Um, we see it every night in our local weather coverage and our news coverage, that more and more Maori is being used. It's now one of the big things you see is that on a lot of advertisement, it doesn't say New Zealand, it says Aotearoa, which is the Maori name for New Zealand. even I can count a little bit in Maori, and I know a few colours, and I can look at words and I actually know what they mean. And yet I was never taught it, but because it is being used in so many areas now, that it's helping keep that language alive. And I think that that's really good.
Yeah.
And to listen, I find that, to listen to a very, very fluent orator, it is just so musical. It is so beautiful to listen to. Yeah, so it is, and it's a shame that you can't get that same sort of interest in behind your own speaking, your own language for your tribal area. Is it the same issues amongst all of the native tribes?
Yeah, they've assimilated so much that they're basically losing the culture of who we really are. Like they would rather be a white person than know their own culture. Basically, is how I would put it.
Yeah, no, that is sad.
Well, it's about money, isn't that like
yeah?
It's not a saying. It's when the last tree is cut down and the last river is poisoned, the last fish is caught, then only will the white man discover that he cannot eat money.
Yeah.
Now we might have a lot of harsh rules over here with guns and things like that, but by the same token, we have the other benefits that, we actually are starting to really embrace our culture. Well, a lot of us are. Well, you're always going to have the diehards that just don't want to, but there are so many more now that are embracing the whole cultural thing of it, that it's really lovely, And I mean, recently I was in a situation where there'd been a death not far from where I was, and I heard the karaka going up, or prayer, and so I ran down in my jammies so I could join in with them, because I wanted a blessing on that place where that person had passed as well. And they welcomed me, and it was so lovely, because that's what I felt was required. And it's getting more and more accepted these days than what it was even 10 years ago. So it is really lovely to see.
It makes me...
And I'm sorry that it's not happening in with your Indigenous people.
Because it's simply... I feel like more of it is coming back into a revival period. I really do. And a period, again, where it's not just revival, but a rebirth. And something that it should be, because when we're looking at the stories, it made me think of, okay, when I was in college, I had an actual person come from the Seneca Nation, and he was talking about even the name. When we say Indians, but they were saying Indians, right? When people came here and colonizers. But think about it as being Indios, which means basically in Spanish, because the first colonizers were in Spanish here, the Spaniards. Indios literally means in God. And if you really look at the stories of the Great Spirit, why was it so easy to assimilate in a way, but also subjugate? Because a lot of the stories are very similar to what the core teachings would be when you had missionaries coming over. Now, was it right, obviously, to subjugate them? No. But just him talking about it, and you're looking at the stories, and again, talking about Mother Earth, and you're talking about the Spirit, the Creator, the respect that you have for it, and then it's more than just culture. This is spirituality in its core. This is your connection with the Creator. This is your connection with Earth. This is the I remember a quote from that. It's like, when the blood in your veins returns to the sea, it's something along that line, and the earth in your bones returns to the ground, and it's perhaps you'll remember that this land does not belong to you. It is you who belong to this land. So it's so much more that's being lost. Why not being taught?
Yes, and I think that for me, the more that I've gone back into my past lives, the more that my whole mindset has altered, because knowing that in past lives I was of these different cultures, male, female, and to be able to, I had someone tell me the other day that although that I am European, they told me that I had an Indigenous heart, and it sort of blew me away. But excuse me, I've got to get a drink of water. That's what happens when you put a bit of fly spray in a tiny little area.
But yeah, it's so much more. I mean, like when you really listen to the story, it's not listening to it to hear it, but it's listening with your heart. Again, Indigenous heart, because we are, we belong to the land. You belong to Mother Earth. It's part of being symbiotic. It's a symbiotic relationship. And what we call old ways aren't really old ways, but the ways that should be, the way that we should be living, instead of this concrete and tearing it down. Again, destruction. You're given the keys to creation, and why are we creating destruction? I mean, we've had that obviously go on within our Discord community in the last couple of days. You're given the keys to create beautiful things to help humanity, to help bring the symbiotic back, to help heal Gaia, to help heal this, help heal Source, help heal the stories, help heal the people, and yet, given into the wrong hands, somebody would rather make a weapon. Somebody would rather blow it up. Somebody would rather do something to cause harm to brothers and sisters.
Yeah, it's
There's always going to be
What was that?
yeah, unfortunately.
There's always going to be somebody that's going to take a certain part of a story and also try and twist it.
Correct.
And be like, you're attacking me with that certain part of that story.
True.
We've seen that happen.
Yes. That goes back to ego, but also perspective and whatever layer they're in. Been there, done that myself at times.
I think we're all a little bit guilty of doing something like that.
Yes.
And I think because we are human, it's going to. We're not perfect, and to be able to see things from different perspectives and from different cultures and thoughts, it all helps us grow towards the right path of whatever that path is for you, because we all have individual path. And I've always sort of been of the opinion, more so over the last few years, that if it feels right in my heart and right in my gut, that's what I go with. So, yeah, but I can't even watch a boxing match on the television because I hate violence that much. I can't watch it in sport at all now. It just really, really upsets me.
I mean, it's also, again, like, it's the perception we're in, but it's also, again, most people take things and they want to learn and say, how does it help me? Instead of, how does it help we? How does it help the us? That's the whole thing. And you can tell that. So when somebody takes and twists something, is, well, how does it help me? How does it affect me? As opposed to, how is this action that I'm doing, this story that I'm hearing, this information that I'm viewing, the world I'm observing, how does it help us? What can we do to, like I said, create? What do we do to turn it around? What do we do to bring back that balance? Instead, everybody is thinking in their own short-term goal, which is a short-term goal, their own internal self-gratification, right? Self-gratification has actually been something that came up in the last few days too. Temporary fix to something that is missing within a person.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the $6 million question. Or these days, we have to say $1 trillion question, because when I grew up, $1 million was something you'd never ever dream about. So now I have to say trillion.
Hey, $1 million
Yeah.
a lot. Hey, at this point for myself, $1,000 is a lot.
Yeah, but I think so long as you're not putting your thoughts directly onto other people, trying to control them. But I think you also you need, if you can, to say, hey, this is what I think. What's your thoughts on it, rather than just pushing on it like those three warriors might have done, is just go in and take it for granted that you have those rights to trample on anyone or anything. So we have to, and I think we have to watch our words as to how we say things, so that we don't cause those words to be harmful to people.
Grandma says it, and she says have to. So when you say you have to, again, this is old school, obviously. Whatever. So we're going
Sorry.
to, have to, and you need to. It's something, obviously, again, it's a habit that we get through. But when we say you need to do something, there are requirements that we do. Again, some people, you should go get a drink of water. It is kind of a requirement to drink water, right?
Yeah.
But when you're telling somebody they need to do something, they have to do something, it's a suggestion. I highly recommend, I highly suggest that to pay that respect. That you should go get a drink of water. You should go and pay attention to your elders. You should pay attention to the stories. Pay attention to what we're thinking. What, like you said, our words, what we're saying, because sometimes it does get inside a person's psyche when we put that. It's like a trap word on time. When you say we need to go do something, or you have that need, you think about it. Like if you place that necessity on somebody, like you need to go get a car, and that's all they do is spend their entire life going, I need to because everybody else said it.
Yeah. But as you said, Joan, when I was brought up, that was just the standard speech.
Pretty much, yes.
But I myself have to be now very aware of trying to stop using those words, because of the pressure that it can put onto people that is not required. Mm-hmm. So that's before, when I said we're human, we're not perfect, but if we're prepared to look at what we're doing and try and change our lives on things, we can change it, not just for ourselves but for other people, and hopefully for the better.
Yeah.
So that's just that is a really good example of the use of words. And it's also, and I'm more than happy to say, yes, I need to really actually look at how I put things out there, because of my old school bringing up. Those words nowadays put pressure onto people that is unwanted.
Right.
And I'm more than happy to accept that and try and really not try, but I will make a point of not using those type words.
It takes some time, but there is a learning curve. Yeah. I mean, like, I've in a way done it. I always tell people when somebody says they're trying, well, it's either do or do not. So if you didn't do it, then you didn't do it. If you did it, then you did it. So the state of trying is just a state kind of where you're just sitting there going, am I doing it or not? Like it's either one or the other. That's probably the really black and white part about it all. But other than that, like, again, like we're to come to a person and provide the space. We have that space here. Obviously we talk about in the Discord. We have that space where it's like, okay, we see that you're in whatever it is, a fear space. It doesn't mean that we're putting ourselves above somebody else to make a point. It literally is. It's kind of this mirror thing that we see. We're here to, okay, here's your actions. Here's what it is if you spread it out and actually observe the reasoning behind the actions. What's your motive behind having those reactions, that emotion? What is the motive? Because sometimes those come from a root. Sometimes it's the way we're brought up. Sometimes it's the environment we're in. It's society. It's whatever. So instead of, and that's the whole thing, this fear mode. Like, when we go all the way back to it, a lot of everything stems from fear. What fear of the unknown, fear, you're learning, and how many people don't, again, the unknown. Even like we're talking about this whole, you have clash of cultures. Just because somebody grew up in a different part of the world and came here doesn't mean that they get to come here and demand that everybody in this side of the world, when again Columbus came over, whatever, and starts colonizing, that they live the way that they lived. Just because they lived that way, and they lived over there and they paved the roads and tore stuff down, who's to say that is more civilized? Like, why? And we're seeing
Yeah.
it now play out. Is it really better? What did they do to the paradise? They paved, I believe that's a song, they paved paradise and put up a parking lot.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what are you
Johnny
gonna,
Mitchell.
right, like, what are you gonna do when you cut down all the trees? You're not gonna have any shade. What are you gonna do when it rains and it floods? You know what I mean? Like, what are you gonna do after you did all of it? After you, is that really civilized? That's not living with symbiosis at all. And then where'd the fear come from? These people are different. Are they different? Again, that's where the whole creator side of this comes from. Are we not all inside fractals from God's source? We're just living out different perspective. It doesn't mean yours is right and mine is wrong, or Chameleon Jerry's is right, or and his Chief's is wrong. It doesn't mean any of that. It means that I'm celebrating this point that I didn't get to live your life as Grandma. I didn't get to live the life as Jerry or as Chief. But you can tell me your story, and now we can see a better perspective. It paints a bigger picture. It creates more respect. You teach me something just by teaching me a story, by teaching me a part of your life. That's something better.
Yeah. I think if I actually sat down and wrote a book about my life, it would be very, very interesting.
And very long.
I was going to say, and it would go on for chapter
She's
after
really
chapter
old.
after chapter. Yep,
She's what,
yeah.
170 now?
Yeah, pushing it up to the yeah. I'm pushing it up to the Actually, the funny thing is that over the last 18 months, I've actually felt like I'm younger than what I was 18 months back. You know, it's really odd.
We're going back to unity, so you get to go backwards too. Isn't it fun?
Yeah, it is fun.
I mean, one of the things I've noticed is that as we mature in spirituality, as we mature and go back to unity, go back to the connectingness between us, Gaia goes backwards as well. And I say backwards, but she goes back to being more of this Eden and doing it in a way that can often be destructive. And we see that, again, we were talking about flooding, major snowstorms.
Yes, exactly.
So you see it going back into this balanced state. And for us, because we've been so imbalanced throughout many of thousands of years, it looks like chaos. But it's not. It's actually a beautiful creation process. Gaia's taking back the balance. God's source is coming together in unity.
Yeah, I should imagine that after, like, you've had a big snowstorm and you've got the melt and then you get the runoff, then you're going to get a certain amount of flooding in certain areas.
Yeah.
Only for the people that built their house on the side of the hill, Grandma.
Basically.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah, and how many of those houses are built on what was a natural creek that has now been piped, that is not sufficient to take the amount of water that can come off a big snow melt, or like we're just going through here now, a massive lot of atmospheric river rainstorms, and to see the damage that it has done within the built-up areas, it is absolutely amazing. You know, I've seen less damage from the big earthquakes that we had over the last sort of 10 years or so, from the big Christchurch earthquake, where a lot of lives unfortunately were lost, to a earthquake in an area called Kaikoura where it took out a whole main road area for kilometres because the ground uplifted. I have seriously seen more damage from these rainstorms that we've had over the last 3 big ones than I have from those sort of things. It's really amazing.
Well, here's the other
But
side of that. Like, how many, and again, you can see it, how many people, most of the houses are built, especially, okay, in the area I'm in, you can see them development sections, right? You'll see like houses all
yep,
of a sudden spring up in an area that literally, even for me, as I was a child and being 37 years old, when I was a kid and I'm a teen, and those houses were never there, and now there's a whole neighborhood there. They literally mass produce them. But how many companies, knowing that it's a floodplain where the rivers come through, still build the houses there anyway, knowing that that's
yeah,
not a great place to put them?
yeah, because they think that if they put in a big drain pipe, it's going to suffice.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's the major lot of the damage is in the built up areas. And some of those areas, like you said, I can remember as a child driving through, and they were nice undulating farmland.
Yep.
Where it had its natural runoff into, from the creek or the stream to the creek to the river to the sea. And now it can't do that. So it's got to go somewhere. And the sad part about it is that it is, going through people's houses and cars and buses and whatever. But it's also something that hopefully people will actually see as an issue and try and avoid that from happening in future times. I can't see it myself just yet, but
Well, that goes back to teaching the stories, which is what
yeah,
was talking about. Again, how are you
yeah,
gonna, people have a memory that's very short. I mean, how much of it is people are still into said, I'm gonna bring it up, the said programming from news stations. Did we not just go through 2020 and have fake news, and yet they're still, it's like it never happened and they're still watching it, and I'm going, did you not pay attention to any of it? And so the same thing applies to, if they don't know the old stories, how, and there's a lot of old stories about rivers flooding. We hear that indigenous stories, even in the area I'm in, it's rich with it. And yet they still didn't listen to even the indigenous, the old stories about this flooding, and Niagara Falls being, Niagara Falls was at one point, it was dried up, like all of these stories. And then we get to a point where it literally happens and it's a shock for people. And it's like, well, did you listen to the story? Did you go back and look at the
yeah,
history? Did you really pay attention? Did you remember it? Because the best way to make people not remember and still be in a victim mode is to keep the populace as stupid as possible.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Don't teach them the
And
whole
because
ways. Don't let them know.
yeah, and man's greed is the big part to play in that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, even if say somebody had developed a section and they'd left all a bit of undulating land clear and planted it and allowed the natural water flow through, somebody would come in at some stage and say, oops, I can build half a dozen townhouses there. Let's take that out and drain pipe it and just build up over it,
Mm-hmm. And that's the
Because
disrespect.
yeah, and the money.
So when are we having an army of Bigfoots come out and put everything right? Invade the city.
Yes, please.
Right?
Yes, please.
I'd be like, I
Yeah,
told you so.
we don't actually have. Yeah, yeah. The only thing that we have like that is around our waterways, and it's called a tanipa. And so we don't actually have anything like Bigfoot or anything like that within the Maori history for New Zealand. So you'll have to loan us them for a while, okay?
Which
We can let them go back.
this reminded the story even about if you guys are familiar with the X-Files, that was a show I used to watch a lot when I was younger. The one episode called the Jersey Devil, like, and having the Jersey Devil story, and the literal scientist in there is like, well, if somebody, and it looked like a human being, right? The person was a woman, she was a human being, and she came into the city, and there were killings going on in the city, and one of the scientists in it said, well, if something like that, like a Bigfoot or a person in that general made that other, that he was saying it was a regression step back into evolution, right, to be more feral. But if that was let loose in a city area, they would be the apex predator and not humans, because humans don't have that capacity anymore to think that way.
Uh,
Do you have a Jersey Devil story, Chief?
uh, I'm pretty sure I could look into some similar to that and make you a story
I think that would be a
if
cool
you
story.
want it.
It would be a cool story.
That's why I wrote the Wendigo story, was because I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Let me go look into that. And then I was like, oh, I could weave this little part of history into there, and weave this little part of history in there, and bring my most popular character and
it makes a good a story that ties into obviously the legends and such, but
uh,
yeah, the whole thing of being apex predators and Bigfoots and such and what's in the area. I don't even think we have anything in our area along those lines. Although I wouldn't know. There are some pretty wooded areas in New York, so
yeah.
but yeah.
Sorry, I missed a bit of that. Because my grandson's just turned up. I had to just give him a quick hazard. Yeah.
Just talking more about the cryptids and well, I mean if you want to talk about I know you don't want to talk about it, but the skinwalkers, so I mean
Uh,
but it's funny because literally was watching a lot of you can see the ghost hunting stories of them when they're exploring that um and also again about them being controlled spirits, being conjured spirit in here, um
uh,
so you get different aspects of it, and it is funny to there was actually ghost stories. I remember ghost hunting stories that they did. They weren't near any of it, but yet one of the buildings in a particular area in a town around that area, around where Skinwalker Ranch or where Skinwalkers were, or at least in that region, they did catch on you could see it as a shadow on one of their videos. I wish I could find it too. It was one of the ghost hunting ones I used to watch, but they literally saw what looked like the shadow of a dog, and then it stood up in front of a door as a man and turned and walked the other way on the video, and they were thinking it was an apparition, and somebody was saying no, it's a shapeshifter, it's a skinwalker, it's
uh,
literally turned from one thing to the other right on a camera.
did you see that one that was on Facebook? That was on the back road that's right down the road from where I live. These native kids, where they were driving down the back road at night, which you're never supposed to do, and especially when you have a whole group of people with you. But they were riding down the back road at night, and they were recording, and they see this. It looks like a dog, about the size of like a medium-sized dog. And so they're driving, and they go to drive past it, and they see it real good because it's right in the middle of the road, and it stands up, and then it runs off the side of the road, and they start screaming.
I think I saw that.
Yeah, that was right down the road
Screaming
from
as
where I
well.
live. I
Yeah.
had to drive that road like 3 or 4 times by myself after that happened, because my cousin lives down there down there towards one of the oldest parts of the reservation, where most of the low income housing is, where the tribal housing is.
Mm-hmm.
He lives down there, and sometimes he would have relationship problems, and I'd have to go and pick him up, and yeah.
Does it happen more down towards that part?
What?
Does it happen down towards that part of the area?
Because where that part of the reservation is right next to the river. That's like where I live is right up the road. The river's just right. I could go. It's not even like 10 minutes. Well, it'd be longer than 10 minutes, because I'd have to walk down the hill where the river is. But they say that there's Bigfoot over there, because there's white people that live up the road, up on the hill, on the top of the hill. They say that their dogs and stuff will start barking, and some of their dogs have gone missing, and yeah.
Wow.
But I've seen him. He's been because we had our my uncle's trailer parked in the back of the house, and then the dog that we had like 3 or 4 dogs outside, and they started barking, and so I went out there with my flashlight, all cool guy, and um the trailer is probably like 7 feet tall, something like that. And I flashed my flashlight back there, and I saw this big black thing, and his head was a good foot and a half above. The top of his head was a good foot and a half above the where the top of the trailer was.
Oh.
So you tell me what it was.
Yeah, they would be pretty freaky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just went back in the house. I said, my
Shut the
uncle's
door.
like, "What did you see?" I was like, "Oh, this is just Bigfoot out there, but he ran away."
We go back in having lunch. That's
Yeah.
great.
It was actually dark. It was nighttime. It was like 9 o'clock ish, something like that.
Wow.
But
Yeah, I would
yeah,
have gone in and make sure all the doors locked. Not that if you wanted to come in, you'd stop them with a locked door, but never mind. It's that false sense of security that we can give ourselves.
mm.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
even my one uncle, they got they got kicked out of their house up there, and so they were staying in the trailer outside, and we had like power and stuff hooked up to the trailer, and he said that something slapped the side of the trailer so hard that it shook the whole trailer, made the trailer rock side to side while they were in there sleeping.
wow.
Yeah.
Like, here's
That would be very disconcerting.
here's the thing though, is like, what about, and because they say obviously the Yeti, which they're trying to say is like a Bigfoot, but I don't think the Yeti's much like a Bigfoot in a way, because you see them in like the Tibetan mountains, and they're saying they're like a queer, like
Yeah.
white color, so they're different. And I did remember watching a series about it where they thought that they had gotten DNA sample from it and found out it was some weird mutated polar bear or something. It was something along those lines, and I go, I don't think that that's what they, like you've seen the
Yeah.
video. I've seen videos of look like a huge white beast, like an
Yeah.
ape even sitting in the snow on the top of a
Hmm.
mountain. And yet I want to ask, it's like, well, what do they eat and why are they there? And what, is that similar to Bigfoot? Like,
Actually, we do have something here. That you're talking about Yeti. I didn't stop to think about it, but yeah, not far from where I am, there's an area, and they call him the Mohui man. That is supposedly Yeti-like. Not as big as a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, but still a shaggy man, for want of a better description.
well, I know where Jerry's located at. They have what's called the skunk ape in the Everglades, around that area. Jerry must have fell asleep. I don't know what's going on with Jerry.
Mm.
Yeah, Mohui man or Mohui man. I
Wow.
remember the pronunciation. But
Mhm.
yeah, and he's Yeti was the thing that I think they associated more with than a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. And I wonder if it's a size difference.
I don't know.
Because I don't think a Yeti is supposedly as big as what a Sasquatch is.
It'd be
From
interesting.
what I've read. Yeah.
Here we are figuring out what's Bigfoot and Yeti and all these cryptids, and like everybody else is saying, we have 70% ocean and most of it is not even explored. I'm like, we don't even know what's at the bottom of the ocean, and we can't even figure. I say can't, but a lot of us are not able to figure out is what's the Yeti, what's the Bigfoot,
Yeah.
and yet it describes, like we said, the multi-dimensional natures of it. The portal from the top of the mountain to the all of a sudden right in the trees, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. But I mean, there are places in the ocean where we don't even have the equipment to get down to the depths that are there.
Mm-hmm.
it's just too deep for anything that we can produce at the moment that won't get squashed. Going down into those depths.
And you know what's funny is that the notion that I had gotten of Bigfoot being be able to portal in and out, but to be interdimensional in a way. There was a show briefly. I used to watch a lot of the Sci-Fi Channel growing up. It was a show called The Invisible Man. It wasn't the movie. It was called The Invisible Man, and it was literally about a guy who was part of a government experiment.
Yep.
And he was injected with quicksilver, and he would turn invisible. And there was one episode where they were camping outside and came across a Bigfoot and found that he had the same capabilities of camouflaging and turning invisible. So it was like, okay, now this kind of it really did start making sense. But you know that they hide stuff within television shows, they'll hide stuff, you know what I mean? Like in movies. But it did start to make sense. And this was way before all these Bigfoot shows used to come out, like the Bigfoot hunting, the Sasquatch. What do they call it? I forget what they call it now. There's a name for it where they go Bigfoot hunting and they have it televised and stuff, and people record it, like the tree knockings and stuff, or do Bigfoot calls out in the woods. And I'm like, okay, but it's way before all of that. And I was just like, it just kind of turned to my brain in the middle to think about it and be like, that makes sense. It would make sense.
We still recording?
Yes, we are.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
We're having a nice long chat.
But you were asleep.
I was.
Our subject.
This is true.
Our subject sort of ended up on this a bit sidetracking, but coming back to the same thing, with the Sasquatch or Bigfoot, and then
But we had to make a circle, Grandma.
Yeah.
A circle is never ending. That's why you put a ring on it, because it's never ending. But sometimes that ring falls off and then it ends.
Yeah.
You didn't get it, did you? It's a relationship joke. Come on, Grandma.
Yep. No, I had a ring on for many, many years. In fact, even after all these years, you can still see where it's at, because I haven't worn it for a while because I got too fat.
Wow.
Grandma.
That's not the 1800th time I've heard that story, though.
I can still sort of see the mark from where it was on my finger for all those years. I said it was until I got a bit fat and it got a bit tight, and so I just carry it with me now. But it is. We've gone right round the whole circle and ended up back with your Sasquatch.
Yep. Because how stories are supposed to go, aren't they? Kind of beginning and start, beginning of an ending, and ending is a new beginning, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of the swamp ape.
The skunk.
Is it large? Is it whatever? Okay, skunk ape.
Well, the reason why it's called the reason why it's called the skunk ape is apparently the one in Florida, because it lives in the Everglades. It's in a swampy area. It smells horrible. So,
is it large?
They say it's a little bit bigger than a silverback gorilla, but it walks on 2 feet.
That's pretty large.
Yes.
I think of our deer. We have deer down in the Keys. They're tiny.
Yes, I've seen photos of those tiny little deer.
Well, who's to say it doesn't eat just deer?
True. Or alligators.
Well,
Wrestle one.
Yeah. Hopefully it's eating the pythons that are overtaking
Yeah, that is. I was reading about them not long ago. Man, it sounds pretty horrific as to what's happening over there with introduced, illegally let out species, or ones that accidentally get themselves out of wherever they're confined. You must be the ideal breeding grounds for them over there.
Oh, well, yeah, it's a swamp.
Yeah, and it's warm, temperate. Yep, perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people think they want a python in a tank, and then they realize it's not all that great.
No.
You have to take care of it. Anybody
Yeah.
want it?
Gotta feed it.
Nobody wants
Yeah.
it. Okay, what am I going to do with it? Take it out in the
Throw it out the
Everglades,
swamp.
knock it off.
Yeah. Yeah. I see they have major hunting days for them over there as well.
Yeah, it looks like they should open it up all the time
Yeah, I think it should be open season on them.
because
We have a lot of introduced species here that have caused
they've
massive damage.
overtaken. There's a lot
Yeah.
of things that they've wiped out.
Yeah.
We still have the I don't know if you've seen it. It's been called the Seneca or the Akron deer. They're deer that are all white. They look like regular red tail. They look like regular white tailed deer, but they're all white. And I've only seen one in our area down by I don't know what the creek name is, but I think it's the Cayuga Creek. But
Did you shoot it?
no, it was absolutely beautiful though. It
He
was
was
one.
hungry.
It was a buck, and it was surrounded by the regular does, regular white-tailed deer, and he was all white. And I literally saw him, and you could see the females were around him, so obviously you could see there was something different. But I was like, he was absolutely beautiful, and I was a teen, and I actually saw him across the river. I was standing in a cemetery, an old cemetery. We were checking out, and we looked across the street. That was there. There was a house on the other side, and then it literally is the creek there, huge creek. And in the glade on the other side of that creek, he was standing there, beautiful, big rack, and was all white. And it was just like one of those like, wow, you just saw a white deer, white stag, like completely like huge, like white tarp, huge creature, and you're just like, that was the only time I saw one of them. And I mean, like, if you look at the connotations though and bringing it about, why it was something, for me, it was something spiritual that happened because back in Celtic time, and even our we're from Scottish clan. We trace ours back to Maxwell. Their moniker is the white stag in a burning bush, which kind of goes back to the whole Yeshua line, right? The burning bush, Moses. We go all the way back. The white stag was to represent the Druids, but also the magic, but also like Merlin, and you even white stag representing the divinity part, right? And you see that it was spiritual for me because I seen it play out in one of the recent movies. If you've ever watched Snow White and the Huntsman, and she's literally same thing. She's in the glade, and the white deer comes out and bows to her to give her a blessing. To basically be, she's the one that's the warrior that's going to help bring back her people, bring back her kingdom from the witch, the witch, the mirror witch who's causing all this trauma. So for me, it was just like something spiritual to see, to be like, wow, this huge white deer in this area. And not a lot of people have seen them in the area, and yet they're here. They're literally in this area. It's kind of like your Bigfoot. Like, where did you see one? Once in a lifetime? So just different, that I don't know if it's endangered. I don't know if it's just that we don't see them a lot. I have no clue. I've only seen one though.
Maybe it's interdimensional.
And maybe it is. It was absolutely beautiful though.
The government tried to wipe out the Seminoles
Uh-huh.
forever, and they just couldn't do it. They had all the advantage, but the Seminoles were hiding in the Everglades.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see from that, just getting really putting that to the pythons, you can see why they've got so rampant over there. If they couldn't find a human in amongst that lot, how are they going to find introduced type dangerous species?
That's crazy.
But yeah,
I know there
it's
used
like
to be a lot
they
of wild boar out there. I bet they ate those up too.
yeah. What's like in Tasmania and Australia, I think I've got my history correct, that the white man actually totally eradicated the Aborigine from Tasmania. So yeah, it was they put a bounty on them.
You're
I can't think of being that.
they were out hunting men. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, that's just what I said. Yep.
That's how it was here too.
It was a sport.
You got paid for bringing in scalps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
it's like at some of the residential schools. If you turned in a kid that ran away from the residential school, you got paid for that too.
Wow.
Wow. And that to me is in what I class as recent history.
Yeah. Because that didn't stop until like the 90s. There's still residential schools in the 90s.
Yeah. That is unreal.
And that's where, well, I'm hoping that, again, friend would come on. Jessica would be on here because, again, she's a school teacher in a lot of minority schools. And she does go through, again, you see how it's being treated there, that they're just, it's not right. And there's no creativity. And she's talked about it quite often. But she's on this, this mission to bring back the richness, the passion, the creativity side, the culture, all of that, what makes, the beaded culture, the fashion of it, the clothing of it, all that is there to bring it back in, because she's seeing the same thing. You going to the school and they're not learning. They're barely even learning even just what the state wants to cram down their throats. And it's like, is this the way that we're supposed to be going? I don't think this is the way that we're supposed to be going.
Yeah.
To have all that.
Children nowadays go to school. I mean, they don't even go to school to eat their lunches these days, do they? They turn up at the gates and walk away. Mm-hmm. Because there's nothing within those school gates to interest them, to stimulate their minds, to get them learning in anything. Yeah. I mean, Paul used to joke that he only went to school to eat his lunch. He never wagged as such. He did the odd day or two when he'd go trout fishing with his mates or up the back of the hills goat hunting. But yeah, nowadays there's just nothing within those gates to stimulate their minds to get any kind of learning going, regardless of what type of learning. In the good sense, they certainly can learn the wrong way of things quickly enough.
Well, one of the best ways in learning is to, like I said, to incorporate the creative side, music, and the arts. All of that is integral into helping. Again, it stems from there. Creativity, the source of life, right? So creativity is one of the first ways in which you can relate things to science, to art, to history, to math. You can even just painting it, like painting music, right? I'm painting music, I'm painting a pitch. Pitch is a beat. Beats have, if you look on a piece of paper that's music, they're usually letters and numbers, right? An eighth of a note, and it equates to that. So now you're learning math. And then you're literally seeing that in the way, even the Fibonacci spirals in some of the paintings, right? You're seeing how all of that equates to life, and they're not being enriched that way. They're literally just getting it crammed in their heads. This answer's A, and that's what you're going to put down on the paper, and that's all you need to know to pass. And you don't have to know why, and you don't need to know how it fits with anything else in your life or anything. And I go, that's not learning. That's just indoctrination and zombification.
To the days when the Indigenous or whomever used to build their canoes or say a hide canoe, and they wanted it X number of feet long. They had to work out some sort of measurement system so that they knew how long that was going to be, and to that then they had to work out how many hides would actually go on to skin that hull that they have made, and how many bracings and ties they had to have to get it put all together. So it was all learning of
because you're working with an irregular shape as it is with the hide.
Yeah, that's
unless
right.
you cut it into a square or whatever.
So you had to be able to work out how many hides you actually, what size hides, how many hides, and how to get them all together, and waterproof them. So isn't that teaching mathematics and perceptions and all sorts of things?
Unless you had somebody that already knew, like, if we need a 30-foot If we're working on some 30-foot, we need this many hides.
Yeah, that's right. But it's still, but that will be passed down so that the next generations know, and they know how to count, because they need to know how to count, know how many hides. So, yeah, it's amazing what can be built into
Now, let's just say I need a stack of hides this high, and that's how many to make it.
Oh, it's a cheat way. Yeah, but how, I mean, if young ones could be got into some sort of interesting creative arts, music, whatever, then they would from that be able to learn reading, writing, arithmetic, the 3 R's as they were called when we were at school. But they don't. It's got to be this strict plan that has got you can't do any offshoots from it.
And that's where,
because it's not their curriculum that they want taught.
That was the idea behind story time. Again, the first 3 podcasts that I did was talking about the way, again, the Israeli, they call it the Israeli God, right? The Yahweh, but it's just letters, YHWH, which actually makes an actual geometric figure, which is called the tetragrammaton, which is actually where, when you put it in the flower of life pattern, when you add pitch to it, a noise, a vibration, because we're all vibration, then you get a color, and it hits certain parts in that circle that, when it's mapped correctly, actually made the first letters of the alphabets, of letters in alphabets in ancient writings. It actually made those geometric shapes for the alphabet. And if you're adding the pitch to it, then you're already adding the phonetic to it, which now is where you get the spoken language, right? So that is why we tie it back to the one point, that one source. What's the first code that was injected into the matrix here? But when you lose that teaching, now you injected pitch, which is color, right? Which is a vibration. Light is a color because light is vibrating. And the way that light moves and how it's quantum, and then you have the whole flower of life pattern, you have the sound of it, so now you're listening to it, now it's music. And you have the math of it. What's the math? How do you map it as a math, right? As this flower of life pattern. And a lot of those are in very ancient, you see them in cave paintings as well. So now you're talking indigenous way back, right? It's all been written, but yet we don't enrich the children that way. We don't give them that, hey, this is how it's related. We just say that here's history, but it really isn't related to science at all. It's just history. And is it real history? Because we're not teaching all of it. And then, how is it related to music? How is it related to science? How is it related to, again, I just related colors and music and words and language and history to painting, to art, to music. It's all relative. So why are we not teaching that?
Yeah.
We just teach
that
them
would explain
pieces.
To me. Yeah, I never stopped to think about that, but that would explain to me why when I've been with some other different people and they've used tuning forks and I close my eyes and I can actually see colors and shapes coming from the different pitches of the tuning fork. Each one of them had a different color, a different shape, and I could see that with the vibration.
Yes.
And I mean, it wasn't even in the same room as me. It was from some people online, but I could see the color and shapes of that vibration. Now I know why.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's like, can you imagine now we aren't teaching children this. And then think of what that blooms inside of you. So now you know the why. You now know the vibration of it. We're not teaching them going back to that. And a lot of that is taught in the old culture. It's taught in there. It's in the medicine wheels. It's in the mandalas that are drawn. It is in even the rooms that you see. I forget where they're at. I think some of them are in Petra, where some of those rooms are basically, you can put and play a pitch in there and reverberates in that entire room because it specifically was designed to encapsulate, like to echo that music back. All of that is written in all these cultures, and how much of it are lost on the winds of time here? Like how much of it is not, it's not heard anymore. Those tales, why are they not being told? Where's the relevancy behind it? And that just opens a person's mind up.
Don't they say that history is written by the winners?
True and not true. We have a
and
multiversal
it's
library.
it's his story. Yeah, his story, and that's the only one that you're supposed to relate to.
But see, now that's the thing. When you go back through the mythologies and you actually connect the stories, you find that it doesn't matter if the person won or lost. You go back into the culture, you can find the common threads, and now you have the bigger piece of the story. Each one of them
But they
fit
don't
together.
teach that.
No, they don't. They don't teach that pattern
No.
recognition. They don't teach you to look for the
No.
commonalities. They teach you to divide each other. Go sit in the corner because you're a boy and this one's a girl, because this one's black and this one's white and this one's whatever. You're conservative, you're liberal. They just divide you. Instead of teaching you that,
Yeah.
guess what? Here's what you have in common. You see art and
Yeah.
colors, and this one hears music and can equate it to it. You guys should be working together. They don't do that.
Yeah. No, because that would mean we would have too many free thinkers around for their whatever they want to do to to us and our Earth, our planet, our mother. That's they've got to try and keep us under wraps. So
And that's why
anyway,
the stories
guys,
are important. So thank you for the story time,
Yeah.
Chief, and thanks, Kiwi and
sorry
Jerry.
it got so long-winded.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I will end it with
Thank
the
you for the story.
Thank you. And I will end this, and then, like I said, all the information obviously will be at the end of this podcast. The story is description of your book and where they can find it, and if anybody wants to join us for a story time or to talk about it, comment on it, you're more than welcome to join the Discord, Chiefs Discord, YouTube, Facebook. We have multiple ways to reach us. So thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Catch you next time.
Night all.